Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Sales Players Podcast. Hey everybody, this is David Craig White, your podcast host, as per usual. I don't know why it is every time I launch this podcast. I think it's because I keep thinking podcast, pod show, whatever it is, and I'm used to saying the word founder that I always seem to almost get that wrong. But yes, as you know, your podcast host, as per usual, here on the Sales Players Podcast. So today I am delighted to share with you one of my good friends and a very talented young salesman and entrepreneur, Michael Rosetti. Michael, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, David.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So reason for today's podcast episode is I wanted to get Michael on the show because I've worked with Michael before. I've managed Michael directly, actually. And I followed his journey, and I respect him very much as a salesperson, as an individual. I love his hunger. And he's quite an inspirational chap, even for an old dude like me. So I wanted to get him on the show today to share a bit of his experience, because I think he's on a journey right now. He's not finished his journey, that's for sure. He's on a journey in the world of tech sales. He's been an SDR. He's been promoted from an SDR, and most recently he's made that jump up to being sort of full-time AE. And we'll go through that in a bit more detail, and we'll talk about that journey and how that is. But first of all, Michael, I always like to start off asking, number one, how the hell did you get into sales? When was the first time you sort of got into sales and started, decide that you liked it?
Well, first of all, thank you for the very kind words, David. Good way to kick this off, eh? Very, very random. It's like, to be honest, it's insane how it happened, right? So I was a student at the time, living in Denmark. You get a student grant if you study. So not being Danish myself, I had to study and work part-time to qualify for the student grant. And I was looking for a new job because I was doing like warehouse work and these kind of jobs, and I had just been laid off from that kind of job. So I was looking for a job, and then I did 5 interviews with a company. That didn't go through. Then I applied for the company I'm working with right now at the same time. And initially, I was rejected. And then about 3 weeks later, when I was at the end of all my possibilities, I had no more interviews. I was done. They sent me a message. Hey, you know what? Why don't you come in? And I had no idea what it was. Zero clue. It said BDR, Business Development Representative. It meant nothing to me. So I did a quick look up on Google, read a bit about it, came in for an interview. That went good. And then I was given a task to sort of role play a cold call towards the decision maker, starting with a gatekeeper and everything. And I had no idea. I was just like writing stuff and trying to nail it. No clue whatsoever. Came in the next day, sat down with the CEO, and he just literally wanted us to role play the scenario. And I'm like, hi, hey, how are you, John? And he's like, no, you're not talking to John. You're not getting through like that. And I was just completely obliterated. And for some reason, at the end of the interview, all I could think of was, okay, what was the other website where I could put a job at? Okay, yeah, I can apply there. It just goes, okay, pull up a contract. I'm like, what? Why? I didn't get it because I was completely off. And he just said that I just did not flinch at all, no matter how many punches he threw on purpose, because he knew I didn't know anything. It was like a completely new role.
Yeah.
And that's how I landed into it, to be able to afford housing for students in Copenhagen. And and it just happened that 2 weeks later I was cold calling, and I just absolutely loved it. It was amazing.
Nice, nice. What did you study out of interest? It's always interesting to understand what people studied before they ended up going being a salesperson.
Engineering. I was doing a bachelor in engineering, telecommunications. So I was
Ah,
learning how to program mobile apps like Android and everything telecommunications wise. And then I was supposed to do a master's, and I was like, yeah, no, not happening.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Too impatient.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is that why you ended up in a tech startup? Was you looking for something like that because it was something what was interest for you?
So initially, I was just applying for anything that wasn't like I was trying to get a job where I could, use my brain, so to say, because like working in another warehouse or whatnot was like complete waste of time. And keep in mind, I was 19, no, 19, 20, 21 at the
Yeah,
time, something like that.
yeah,
Um, it just happened that I was applying to tech startups, but I wasn't even like necessarily. It could have been anything, right? It just happened that I was applying a tech startups, and I ended in a tech startup.
yeah.
So that was really cool.
Sorry, I'm just switching my blur on there. I can see
Yeah, I can
my
see.
camera. My camera's flickering. It's making it look like that. What was that movie where the girl climbs out of the screen? So I'm trying to make sure.
The ring. Ooh.
The Ring. That was the one. Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. All right. So talk to us about. It's your first job in sales.
Mm-hmm.
You never done it before. Was there an existing
Nope.
team there when you got there, or was like how big was the sales team?
Uh, Sort of. So there was three people selling. There was no sort of manager over the sales team, so the CEO was overseeing the sales department,
Yeah,
and there was like three people selling. One person who was doing more like a operationally trying to keep things together, and
yeah,
then me and another girl got hired to do essentially BDR work, so to do
yeah,
cold calling, outreach, booking meetings essentially.
yeah,
And there wasn't like much of, there was no structure, there was no tools. We had a CRM, so that was great, but there was pretty much nothing there. I walked in, I was given a laptop, and the lady who was doing the kind of the more operational side, she basically took on the challenge to like the task to help us onboard us, show us around, like 1 hour of training what to say on the phone. That
yeah.
was it. And then it was, here you go, good luck. And initially it started with, I was doing like, because I was also working part-time, so
Yeah,
I was doing like more of a, operationally in the CRM, fix this, do that, do this. But immediately it turned to, okay, we need you to book meetings, we need you to start calling. And I had no idea what, like, I was completely clueless. So I just went on YouTube and I started writing how to cold call. I had no idea. I had seen The Wolf of Wall Street, but that was, the action was happening in the 80s, so I assumed it was a little bit different nowadays. And that's where I started, or that's how I started essentially.
okay.
Um,
And what sort of markets was you calling into? Which
UK.
markets? UK? Oof. Oof,
Yeah,
one of the toughest ones to call into, right?
yeah, I was thrown right into the toughest one.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's actually probably the best market to learn in. It's because it's brutal, but it's
Yeah,
it's it's definitely a good learning experience. And I think most
for
markets
sure.
after that you don't find as difficult, right?
And that's exactly what happened, because right after I was calling the UK, I figured out these guys, they're not really strict on who I'm calling as long as I'm booking meetings. So I
Mm.
went by myself and started picking up accounts in different markets. And
Yeah,
that's when I figured I connect much better in the Netherlands. And then I just kept doing that because it was just getting
yeah,
more,
yeah.
more meetings. So
Roll back and think about that first day when you was actually on the phone and you was given given your CRM and your telephone and told to go out, build your scripts and whatnot. Do you remember though?
mm.
Do you remember that those first experiences of when you actually did start to make the calls and call customers? What was it like in those first couple of days there? Or do you remember actually? Do you remember the first call?
My memory is not the best. My long-term memory is not the best, but I do remember the first couple of calls were obviously cringe. Um, they were horrible, because like you have to understand, like I literally had a script from her, which wasn't even much of a script. It was more like indications on what to say.
Yeah,
And for me, it was like I was scared shitless because I'd never done it before. And whenever I encounter something like that, I stop thinking, I just go full in. like cold turkey. I don't care. I just press dial. I literally came home and I was taking a cold shower because for the first time in my life, I started taking cold showers because I knew if I can do that, getting on the phone is easy. And that's kind of how I got over the fear of getting on the phone, combined with like standing up.
So some SDRs, they just decide that they're going to play with the CRM all day just to avoid making those first calls because it's so like frightening in the beginning. You call turkey instead.
Instantly, yeah. And I had no idea. That's that right after I was like, okay, this is not working. After the fifth call, I was like, this is not working. Like they're literally telling me to fuck off. So
Yeah.
I went on YouTube and that's when I started, okay, how does this work? And to my luck, I found a guy who's doing a Sandler approach, which I know you're not a big fan of in cold calling. But what I learned from the guy, since it was my first touch point with like how to do anything in a call in sales, the guy was very heavy on questioning and
Yeah.
digging into pains and finding problems. And that's when it clicked to me that if I just go in and I just talk about what I do for 2 minutes, it's not gonna fly.
No.
It's just not gonna work. And that's when I kind of started to build up. And then the number one thing that helped me, because my biggest problem was opening the call. I felt anxious because I felt like I'm trying to appear as if I'm not trying to cold call you, but it's super obvious what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it just never worked for me. And this guy would just call you and just be like, hi, my name is Michael. I'm going to be upfront. This is a cold call. Do you want to hang up or let me have 30 seconds? Yes or no?
Yeah.
That kind of style, right? And I tried that and it worked so well. I never tried another opener afterwards because literally 99% of the time they were just laughing.
Yeah.
And that to me was so easy to open the call and to get a conversation going. Personally, it relaxed me and it relaxed them, and it felt like it put their guard down, and then we could have a chat. And that was the best thing. And that happened like first month, and that was the best thing in the beginning.
And this is an interesting topic as well, and this is one sort of what's talked about a lot. And I think like nobody ever comes up with a magical answer because there isn't a magical answer about what's the best call opener. And the one you use there is probably one what's used and probably the one you see on social media. Everyone's posting and being social these days, SDRs in particular. You see a lot of people sharing very similar opening lines, but then you see all sorts of other stuff coming and everyone has this big debate about what works best. Oh, well, that doesn't work best because it doesn't work half of the time. And I think, I'll get your opinion on this, but like personally for me, it's kind of like none of them work every time because you're doing cold calling and cold calling doesn't work every time. And if you do 100%. One of them enough, then it will eventually work. Which one it is, of course, you have to do a mass amount of calls and measure them a lot, but you have to stick to the same one. And I think a lot of people they flip, right? They go back and forth. They have a bad day. So they decide, oh, my script's not working. Let's change it tomorrow. And of course, I think that has a problem then because then people number one, they're like, yeah, that opener doesn't work because it didn't work for me that day or that week. This one was a bit better because, well, half of the time they say it was a bit better because they just got that meeting just out of pure luck from numbers maybe that day. And all of a sudden then that becomes their go-to script, even though it might be totally pants.
100%. You know how salespeople are. It's like, how do you know this works? Well, because it's tried and tested and I've done it a lot and all. And in reality, it's just my last 2 conversations worked based on this. There's not a lot of data behind it, but it's true what you say. I have this very strong belief: do what works for you, do what brings you results. Obviously, within certain aspects, you're not gonna go and do something illegal here. But for me, this just gave me this confidence, and then it kind of reaffirmed the belief. And then I was like, okay, this works for me. So then I'm more confident. So the next time I do it, again, I see results, and it's like a flywheel. I just keep getting that belief reassured in my head, and every time it just keeps getting better and better and better. But to be honest, from my experience, almost everybody has a different way of doing it. I think it's also like a personality thing. It's also like, and of course, there's some openers that work better than others. You're probably not going to get far by saying, hi, how are you doing today, sir?
Please no.
Obviously. But what I learned from you is, which is super effective, and I hear a lot of people using it to this day, and it's so effective. Hi, John, am I catching you at a bad time? It's just it's straight to the point. yes, no, if no, okay, get to the
Yeah.
point. It's so effective. It
And you
works
know,
so
the
well.
funny thing is, like, I'm going to look forward to the comments now after that, because I'm going to get absolutely battered in the comments for that. Because I see so many people saying, why would you ask that? Why would
Mm,
you ask that question? I think it's people class it and call it as like it's the permission based thing. It's not a permission based thing. It's a pattern interrupt, basically.
mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, you've read what I wrote in my book, and of course that's where you got it from, right? It's like I've
Mm,
always used that, because for me, I don't want to speak to somebody if it's a bad time. Like, and if you
yeah,
ask them that straight away, it is a pattern interrupt. It jerks them like,
yeah,
so it's,
yeah.
your pattern interrupt has worked, and that's the whole goal of a pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt isn't going to mean that your conversation's going to go fantastic, but it's disrupted the behavior of the thought process in that person's head, and that's the goal of it. And I think especially
Definitely.
with, like, if you're asking, is it a bad time? If they're on their way into a meeting, do you want to try and spit out your 30-second script before they go to that meeting? Are they going to remember that tomorrow? Or would you should have just be like, all right, yeah, John, well, sorry I caught you at a bad time. What time's best? What time can I catch you best,
Totally.
right? I'd sooner do that and then try them again at 4. All right, most of the time they're not going to answer, right? Some of them would be like, yeah, I'm going to block that number, or I'm going to remember that later on. That happens. That happens in
Mm.
90+% of your cold calls, right?
But that's
So
sales.
yeah, that's sales. And I think that's the thing, is like there's always this big hoo-ha and the big debate about what's the best
Hmm.
call opener. At the end of the day, who gives a shit? Because none of them work very well.
No,
Because you work in sales and nobody wants to take a sales call half of the time.
no,
So rather than spending so much energy judging what cold call works, unless you sit there and measure 1,000 of each one of those scripts on the same people, then nobody can say which one works the best. You just go off your gut feeling,
totally.
right? Yeah, and
And it
definitely,
also depends who you call, as you said. If you're calling,
yeah,
development versus sales. If you're calling salespeople, it's things work differently than if you call someone who's like a very technical person. It's
yeah,
just that's just how it is. So it
yeah,
really depends. Yeah.
yeah. And just for context as well, of course, I mean, you've been sort of working right now in the same company throughout so far your sales career, right?
Yeah.
The
Almost
type
three
of
years.
personas what you've been speaking to, been mainly sales and marketing people, right?
Yes, sales and marketing primarily. CEOs sometimes depending on the how big the organization is. So founders, MDs, CEOs,
Yep.
CMOs, CCOs, but it's commercially driven people. So like
Yeah.
it's very rare that we would talk to a CEO or a founder, for example, who comes from a technical background that has zero sales or marketing background.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that
It's
helps.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not transactional sales. It's not enterprise as such. I know there's some enterprise in there, right? It's
Yeah.
more SMB, some larger
Yes.
deals, sales cycles 1 to 3 months.
Yes.
Average order values, nothing super expensive. Excuse me if you could hear
Yeah.
that. That's Adobe taking over my machine again. And then sort of order values, sort of again, typical mid-market order values there could be 5k euros, could be 20k euros plus.
Yeah.
Just for
Exactly.
context, so everybody understands that sort of you're not working in a complex enterprise environment and stuff when you talk
Yeah.
about your experiences.
Yeah.
So Michael, you kind of went from SDR. I suppose in the beginning, was your role actually SDR, or you was doing full
Oh
cycle
God.
stuff, right? You was closing deals as
I
well.
was, yeah, so I was doing, so when I started, it was like I said, it was kind of part-time, then I went full-time. It was SDR, but I was also doing a lot of operational stuff. Then I got promoted to AE and I was doing full sales cycle. So we had no SDRs anymore. There was no SDR team. It was just
So
full
that was
sales
the
cycle
first time you
AEs.
got promoted. Was literally when.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I did that for about a bit over a year, I think.
Yep.
And that's where we were like doing literally full sales cycle. And there was inbounds as well. We were doing a lot of outbound, but there was inbound as well. So it was like a mix, I would say 50-50 mix.
Yep.
But you would have to juggle, okay, cold calling or following up on inbounds and managing your pipeline and closing deals and so on. So it was the full thing. And also the team was small. There wasn't like a sales ops department or a pot where you could just come in and take hot warm leads like that. That didn't exist. It's just like you have to grind, you have to do a lot of things, you have to put on a lot of hats. It's still a startup, it's still
Yeah.
early stage. But that
Yes.
was my first
Outbound,
contact with
pure graft. Yeah.
closing.
Pure outbound.
Yes, exactly. And that was, man, that was a lot of fun. That was quite an experience. It's so much learnings, so many
Yeah.
things. Like it was ridiculous.
How do you manage
So
that? How would you manage that when you've gone from a role where you've come in as a brand new salesperson, you've never done sales before, never even picked
mm,
up the phone, you've got
mm,
no marketing support, you've got no materials, you've got nobody around you who's really can help you that much with doing it. So you've already got a tough job there, and then all of a sudden you've gone from having to kind of do that to also then having to do and manage the full process and pipeline building and forecasting and all that stuff and closing
mm.
deals and setting contracts. Like, how was that?
Look, I honestly, I was very lucky to have some amazing colleagues and managers while I was doing this who held me, like literally handheld me all the way there. In the beginning, I started by like just attending meetings just to see what the other guys were doing in the discovery call. It wasn't even like a full discovery call, it was like a discovery slash demo call, really. But just to kind of understand how it would work. And then I thought, it's easy. You just walk them through the platform, you show them how it looks or whatever system you have, and then you just tell them the price and then they buy.
Product sells itself, right?
Yeah, yeah, no. And after my first 3 or 4 meetings alone, that's when my manager at the time pulled me into a room and explained how this like the purpose of a discovery call and how it's not to demo the product and how it's to figure out, what the current situation, what the problem is, why are they even looking into this, and build problems, build pains, this kind of stuff, right? I had no notion of that. So I was very lucky to have amazing colleagues and amazing managers that helped me a lot. And then in terms of like more of a kind of day-to-day management, how do we do it? Personally, what I would do is I would use the calendar and block off times in the calendar as much as possible. So if I blocked off an hour for like cold calling, it didn't matter what was going on around me. Nobody was disturbing me. I
Yeah,
was
you was
calling
pretty
to build
religious about
pipeline.
your structure, right?
Yeah, I'm a very structured guy, which is, from what I understand, very unusual for salespeople. Um, I believe about 99% of them are all over the place from what I've seen and from all my friends. But I'm not like that. I don't know why. I'm a very structured guy. So I was reading a lot of books. I was doing a lot of Googling YouTube, a lot of YouTube, to try to learn how to manage time. And this was like I was just putting in blocks, chunks of 1 hour, and then a little break after. In that 1 hour, it's just like turn off the phone, close LinkedIn, no emails, don't care. 50 tasks, go through them. Boom, boom, boom. Whether it's inbound, outbound, didn't matter. I guess someone on the phone tells me, drop me an email, no problem. Later on, continue, push through. I didn't stop till I had like some meetings in the calendar, because my goal was every time I close a deal, whether it's won or lost, to replace it with as many new deals as possible. At the time, I didn't know what my conversion rate was, so I couldn't quite calculate it. But what I would do now is, if you close 1 out of 10, every time one goes to loss, you need to add 9 or 10 new opportunities, right? So you can keep a full pipeline. And that was my focus all the time. I needed to have that time in the calendar where I could keep a full pipeline, because I noticed that if I don't have a pipeline, I'll feel it in a month or maybe 2 months on the commission check. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
So that drove me to do it. Yeah.
What would you say was the most difficult part of moving from kind of doing the SDR role and focusing on just booking meetings to then switching into that sort of full cycle AE role?
I think there's two things for me. Number one, like in the beginning, I was learning how to do the discovery call, but once I learned how to do that, it was more like managing deals that were a little bit more complex, like stakeholder management, and trying to just manage the deal or to construct the deal and have like a more of a strategic thinking on how to position this deal. I felt like that was very tough, and combined with that was managing the day. Even though I had the call blocks, don't get me wrong, it wasn't an easy task. Like it's not like you're sitting there and you're just getting fed meetings after meetings, and you just got to do meetings and that's it, and you don't have to worry about anything.
Cycle, right? Cycle and recycle.
Yeah, and it was also a bit of, not too much pressure, but it was a bit of pressure because it was also like month to month.
Sales.
yeah, so there was a bit of pressure as well, right? And it's not like, oh, I didn't deliver because X and Y. It's like, no, like you got to deliver. There's no like, I don't have any excuses.
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it either happens or it doesn't. There's no excuses.
All right, cool,
So
cool. Listen, I could probably ask you a ton more questions, but I know there's we're halfway through the story. So let's switch on. So you ended up doing that job then for what was it, 12 months before you made your sort of next switch?
yeah, so I did AE for another like around a year, maybe a bit over a year. Then company went up market, started selling enterprise, very complex deals, very big deals. I simply did not have the experience to handle those, to be quite frank, which is fair. But what happened was we decided to build an SDR team, and there was an opening for a team lead position, so a leadership role, and I was offered that role, and I took that role. Uh, Very happy with that, and then I moved into a SDR team lead position. So then I moved from a role to leading a team of SDRs, which basically we started from scratch.
And just let's roll back. So you went from first sales job, SDR,
Mhm.
part time. From
Yeah,
that
full time
date,
SDR.
from that date up until the date you actually became SDR team leader, sales development manager,
Yeah,
whatever your job title was.
yeah,
How long was that? Was it like a year and a half or something? Or
yeah, something like that. I think because I started in 2000 December 2019 is when I started, and I got the SDR manager role in June or July last year.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
guess it's about, yeah, like almost 2 years, something like that, almost.
okay,
Because I also had a
cool,
part-time
yeah,
role in the
cool.
beginning.
All right. And then I guess that was another new challenge where you had to learn a few new things.
Completely different, right? It was fun. It was learning how to, because in sales obviously your job is to talk to people and to engage with people and to deal with people on a daily basis. That's it. It's a people focused job. But this was like a different beast altogether. I was up for it. I was happy to take the challenge. I thought I could do it. I love leadership. I thought I would enjoy it, so I tried it, and I think it worked out pretty well. But it was a challenge to learn how to. I think the biggest challenge was learning that everybody has a different way of doing things, and there's not one way of managing everybody or helping everybody. You need
Yeah,
to understand that people are different, and you need to be able to adapt based on who you're talking to. And
yeah,
that's when I started studying psychology, because that helped a lot,
yeah,
when having to manage people. So coaching, that was the next big challenge: learning how to coach people, learning how to, you know give the skills that you've learned, pass them on to others.
yeah.
Because while personally I like to take direct feedback, um, some other people might not. And
Mm.
that, to me, I'm a very direct guy, right? I'm Eastern European, so we're very direct. And that can be a challenge sometimes.
Yeah.
But that
I think
was that was fun.
yeah, I think it's probably one of the main things what most new sales leaders in particular, even some old experienced ones, get smacked in the face with instantly, right? I think when you start in sales, it's usually the rejection, right? It's getting
Hmm.
smacked in the face on a daily basis, which is usually you either take it or you don't, and but it comes as a
100%.
shock. And then when you start in leadership, it's usually like, oh, hang on, not everybody likes to get feedback and coaching in the same manner as which I do. So now I have to somehow learn each one of them and adapt to each one of them. And I think to be honest, I think a lot of sales leaders sort of, it's a bit overbearing, right? Or they just
Mm.
too busy to be able to be bothered to do it because they don't have the resources or whatnot. But it's definitely one of those things I've heard time and time again, and I think leaders do struggle with is understanding that everybody likes to be coached in a different way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's funny because I think I've studied coaching a lot, right? You know that. I've been fixated on coaching and NLP and lots of stuff like that
Yeah.
for a long time. I've done a lot of coaching. But I remember when I first started to do that and I first started to really get into coaching, I kind of transitioned from a
Hmm.
training role into coaching.
Hmm.
And I was actually a manager at that time. And I remember I was just asking certain people, like, we was doing call coaching sessions. And I remember going around the room and I was just asking, hey, how do you want to do the coaching session? We should do just call coaching. Up until that point, I'd been doing it a bit ad hoc. And I was just in a pod of in a team, in a pod of people. I had like 10 people in the team. They would just be calling all day, outbound calling. And then I would just be walking around and I would be supporting them. And while they was on the phone, I would be literally, it would be good old school stuff. You've seen it before. Like, I would literally
Yeah.
be putting the customer on hold or putting the customer on mute, while I was telling the rep, right, now you need to say this, now say this, and then taking them off. And like, people loved it, but not everybody. I realized that quite quickly in that moment, because then you have people who are just like, this is great. And everybody thought it was fantastic because then he's repeating what I'm saying and it's working. And they're like, yeah, can you also help me?
Yeah, yeah,
But then
yeah.
all of a sudden you try and do that with everybody and you learn pretty quickly that some people fall to pieces when you do that. They
Yeah.
hate it, they cannot stand it. And I remember then from that moment, I was like, right, I'm going to start asking people before I give them any coaching. I'm actually going to start asking them, how do you prefer that we do this coaching session? So I'd book slots of an hour with each person or an hour and a half. I would listen to their calls for an hour, and I would give them feedback in a different way. And I always remember there was one girl, I was walking around, I was just like, hey, how do you want feedback? Do you want me to be next to you putting the customer on hold? Do you want me to do it straight after? Do you want me to be on Skype or whatever we was using back then, Skype chat, and sending you chat messages? And I remember like most people were just like, yeah, you can just do it here on the spot or just sit next to me over there and just send me a message. And then I had one girl just kind of like, yeah, you can, while I'm on the phone, you can send me messages, but I can't see you. I was like, can't, you can do, what do you mean you can't see me? So, you need to be in a different room. I was like, okay, yeah. So I had to literally get my laptop and go and book a room and
Wow.
sit in a room while she did her outbound calling hour. And then I was chatting and giving her feedback whilst listening in on the same calls. And that was just
Yeah.
that. I always remember that moment because that really, really sort of told me that like how critical it is in regards to understanding everybody's preferred methods of how they prefer to be coached, because it
Yeah.
is super important, because like you can be a fantastic coach, but if you only have one method and one style, like you're only going to be able to train a small portion of your team, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
definitely one of those
Totally.
things what always sticks with me for sure.
Totally.
So yeah. So anyway, enough of my old stories. SDR role, you're moving into it. I'm guessing you're obviously ramping up a new team there. It's obviously a bit of a change in the organization. You're having to do hiring and then onboard people and whatnot. So tell us about that. What was the big challenges there for you?
The whole thing, because it's like I had no idea what I was doing. I've never hired someone before. I didn't know how that looked like. I never, trained anybody or coached anybody. I had no idea. So I was very lucky to have the best coach I know.
Who can that be?
So, oh, who could that be? Like I said, I was always lucky to have amazing managers and amazing colleagues. And honestly, I don't think I would have been even like a quarter so successful if it wasn't for your help and your guidance when I took on this role. Honestly, because you helped me so much, so much. It was ridiculous, especially in the beginning. It's like hiring was interesting because I didn't know how that worked, and then I found out quite quickly it's not very different than when you do a sale, but there's some facets to it, right? It's not
Yeah.
the same thing. But I think the biggest challenge was not in the onboarding, not in necessarily the hiring, but it was more in the coaching, in the how can I help these guys, figuring out their personalities and figuring out how how do they like to be coached, and also figuring out their strengths and their weaknesses, and how can I help them improve their strengths or sorry, improve their weaknesses, and like double down on their strengths. And that was a challenge. And then also a second challenge was once we grew the team to about around 7 people. That's when I was feeling like, okay, this is becoming a challenge, because that's a lot of people. In the beginning, at one point we were 10 people. It was like pretty much the entire week it was just nonstop, just back and forth, which was
Yeah.
great. I loved it. Don't get me wrong, but at that point, I was okay. I was kind of feeling a cap. I was okay. This is my max in the week,
Yeah.
um, but it was a lot of fun and a lot
Yeah.
of learnings as well.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, and this is one thing I think I rarely hear people ask as well is when you step into a management role, eventually the day is going to come where you have to let
Mm,
go of your first person.
yes,
Yeah. Do you remember the first experience you had?
I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Walk us
tough to forget that one.
walk us through that one. How was that? How was that having to let go of a member of your team?
Yeah, so it was clearly not a fit in terms of just the work environment and everything. It was just not a great fit,
Mm.
um and that was quite clear. And I'd imagined it was going to be a not an easy thing to do by any means, but I didn't think it was going to be that difficult. Like, honestly, I felt really bad. It was really bad. Even though I knew this was the best decision, both for him and for us, it was the right decision. Everybody knew it was the right decision, and yet still it felt horrible. It was very tough. I don't know. It was very tough to because it made me feel like I failed. It made me feel like I failed this guy. I
Mm.
couldn't help this guy, you know, adjust or like, you know, adapt, or I don't know, like integrate into the environment and like thrive. It just, to me, it felt like I failed as a leader, and
Yeah.
and that was very tough. Having to lose someone, it was very tough. So yeah, I think that was the
Mm.
first
How was
first experience.
how did you take it afterwards with the team?
Uh, I think I think I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was both of us where we just went in the room, gathered the guys together, and just told them the truth,
Mm.
and then just explained to them what the situation was, and then we just yeah, I listened to see if if they had any concerns, or if they had any questions, or if there was anything I could do for them at the minute, or if any of them would like to talk one to one afterwards. um and that was that, and then we just continued. I think
Yeah.
the priority was to not dwell in that space too much,
Yeah.
and to understand, okay, it happens. It's just it's a shitty thing, but we got to move on. It's the best thing to do right now.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's exactly how it happened.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that's also one thing. If there's a big difference in between managing a team of SDRs and a team of AEs, then I think
Mm,
that big difference there is in the amount of importance the team culture has on the performance of that team, right?
yeah.
And I think this is also an interesting subject as well in regards to remote work. Because of
Mm,
course there's a lot more remote work going on right now and a lot more SDRs working on their own remotely, not in a team environment. And I think traditionally, like in my experience, even to this day,
hmm,
the culture of the SDRs being together in an office space delivers better results. Whether people
yeah.
know that or like that or not,
Mm.
like it delivers better results. What's your experience with that? Because I know you've had a little bit of experience of both, but also just in general on a daily basis, what was you having?
Hmm.
What was you doing in order to keep your team motivated and keep that energy level in the room high? Because you've done that job before, you know how hard it is. It is the hardest
Yeah.
job in sales, an SDR job, 100%, in my opinion.
Hmm.
So it's a really difficult job to come in and do that every single day, repeat, rinse
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
repeat. What did you do to keep that sort of level of energy there and keep them motivated?
Yeah, and just to add to that also, because when I was doing it, it was during COVID. It was like it started right before COVID, and it was mid COVID. So I actually did it by myself at home,
Yeah.
alone, with pretty much no experience, and I didn't like it.
Okay.
It was like okay, but it was not as fun. I didn't have 5, 6, 10 other people in the room with me with the energy all the way up. But I think to me it's clear. If I would do cold calling or an SDR role, I have to be in the room with the guys. I have to be on the floor. I can do it alone, but it's so tough. It's so tough. And for them to keep everybody motivated, it's all about making it fun. You need to make it fun. You need to. People need to enjoy it. People need to. I mean, obviously, most people don't enjoy cold calling. It's not a fun thing to do in general, but you can make it fun. Things like running competitions, things like rewarding people for doing great, um, things like I don't know, doing group activities, doing group challenges, doing first person to do X gets Y, this kind of stuff. And you don't need a fancy tool or a fancy software or whatnot. I would literally just go to the whiteboard, draw 10 boxes, and I would say you have to get 9 no's before you get your first yes. And if you get 9 no's and then you get a yes, you get a bottle of champagne or something like that. The idea being that they will be detached and they will not be needy, and they will go into those conversations just for having conversation. If there is a fit, they will book them. If not, they won't. And then at that last 10th call, that's when they get super excited to get that meeting. And it creates a fun environment because everybody's just having fun. Or we had a Slack channel, which was like a cold call wall of fame. And they just throw in like the most horrendous, like the most horrendous reactions from people. Would just go like, "Oh, why'd you call it? Fuck you! Stop calling this number!" And then everybody would just have a blast. We would just laugh. Like as soon as someone was mean or like trying to be an asshole, it was just like post it in a channel, play it on speaker so the entire room would hear it, and just have a blast. And I think that helped so much. It helps so much.
It's a good point. And it's funny as well because I think since the start of this conversation, you've used the word fun like 7, 8, 9 times.
I like fun.
But I also think that's a big important piece of you have to enjoy working in sales. You have to find it fun and think it's fun, because if you sat working in sales and you don't think it's fun, of course you're not going to think it's fun every day. That's never going to happen. But if you don't in general actually think it's fun and having fun in your general day, you're either at the wrong company or you're in the wrong job, right?
Oh yeah, and I've seen that. I've actually seen that. I've had someone on the team who, the thing is, they didn't know when they started, right? Like, is this for me or not? And it happens when you start as an SDR, you don't know. But man, after a couple of months, it was quite obvious. Like, hated it. It was obvious, and it's not good. You don't want to stay in that. Like, if you hate it, you don't want to do that. It's just no point.
Yeah, and it is a shame, right? Because I mean, the fact is, SDR role is a good way of getting into a tech startup. A lot of people come into that role not knowing what it is, not having expectations, have tried it before. Somebody might sell them the job and give them the expectations, but a little bit skewed. That happens as well. And then they come in there and, like you say, they hate it, but then they have that challenge of they can't leave, because very often they're not sure what they want to do, or maybe they wanted to be in marketing in the first place, but it's quite difficult to maybe enter. I think it's more difficult to enter marketing and get a marketing job than it is to enter sales and get a sales job, right? I think that's also,
for sure.
You find a lot of people who have a marketing degree and they want to work in a tech startup, for example, and they end up working in sales because that's their entry into the business. And full respect for them, willing to get in there and do the graft in order to get where they want to be. That's kind of the trend what a salesperson would do, right? So full respect for that. But of course, it's when you end up stuck in that role and there is no marketing job for you and you're not really getting that experience you want, then of course it's a difficult situation. You got to really sort of feel for those kind of people who end up stuck in the job who don't like it. And it is a shame.
Especially also when you have like a bachelor degree or even a master's degree on top of it, and then you come in. I've also seen that where there's a certain level of expectation, but it really depends, because if you're coming in for an SDR role, frankly, at least to me, doesn't matter like if you have a study or not, if you studied anything or not, like is the last thing I look at. I honestly don't even look at it 90% of the time. Like
SDR is your education, right?
Exactly, like spot on. Like it annoyed me more when there was a CV and the university was above the work experience. I was just like, why? It didn't make sense to me. It's an entry level position. You don't get taught this in school, so
Should be part of some placement, part of the education piece, right? You should have to just go
Yeah.
in the school holidays. You have to go do a few months worth of SDR work, just so you know whether you really want to go try that after you've finished.
Yeah,
All right,
totally.
cool, Michael. So you've had a good experience there. You've been a team lead, and then I always remember because, of course, yeah, we worked together. I knew even at first you didn't actually want that role.
At first, no, I didn't.
Because you had an ambition, you wanted to be an AE and you wanted to smash it, you wanted to be a fantastic AE and make money. Of course, you
Yeah.
ended up in that other role because of the way the business changed and the structure changed. And then, but now, again, within short period of time,
Yeah.
you have your wish, right? And you've now been
Yeah,
promoted
totally.
back into the AE role, in the more senior role.
Yeah.
So happy with that, I guess.
Yeah, it's I also didn't expect this because the team lead role, I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
I kind of knew I couldn't do necessarily the super high enterprise sales, super complex deals, and that's why also at the beginning I wasn't really happy. But at the end of the day, I was chatting with friends and I was chatting with you a lot, and I was chatting with people. It's like, take it. You can always take an AE role afterwards in a company if you're good.
Yeah.
But a management role, you don't just get it like that, especially if you have no prior management experience. It's not like you're just gonna go get it like that. It's not that easy.
No.
So I was
You're
like,
welcome.
okay,
You're
I'll
welcome.
take it. Thank you, sir.
You were damn good. You were damn good.
It was so good. I'm so happy I listened to you and the other guys. So happy. So um, right now we've changed a bit as well, and very recent, literally last week, I've had another change towards the senior AE position, which is
Yeah.
what I've been wanting to do for a few months now, actually.
Yeah.
It's like you said, I've wanted to do this since I was offered the team lead role, because I like money, no surprise. But it's because I also enjoy it. Like it's a thrill. It's fun. It's adrenaline. I'm like an adrenaline junkie. I don't know. I feel adrenaline just by doing deals and talking to people. And I think just by looking at the deals I've done, I know you're not the biggest fan of doing, for example, enterprise deals because they take forever and it's very slow. And after having done this team lead role and looking at my colleagues who were engaged in those kind of deals, where it took 6 to 12 months, I have to be honest. I do not want to do those kind of deals, like super big enterprises. I agree with you. It seems so boring, and I just need to be challenged, consistent. It needs to be fast paced. And right now, mid market, upper mid market, it's amazing. It's fast moving. I feel challenged, and it feels amazing. So I'm super excited and happy to be doing this.
Cool. Yeah, I think definitely, you're of that persona type who I kind of already knew. I think when you're also very direct and you like that and you like fast moving, like enterprise sales usually isn't for you, right? Because you're too impatient for it. And
Exactly.
I was always the same. I was always like that. And again, it's like the same as an account management role. When you're a sales rep and you've done a sales job or an SDR job, a job, do you have the ability and the capability and the skills to do an account management role? Yeah, you do. But do you have the patience to be able to sit in that job for 3 or 6 months before you get bored shitless? No,
Man.
you don't. And I think it's the same with an enterprise sales role. Like you could do it, but you don't want to, right? Because you just know
That's
your
it.
heart's not in it, and you just don't want to drag it out. Like you feel like you've got your win sometimes, right? You've got your win before you get the contract. Sometimes you're like, right,
Totally.
done, next. Because somebody handle this from here. So it's a particular type of salesperson who's built for enterprise sales and built for SMB and built for the you got the real transactional stuff as well, where it's closing each day a deal a day or whatever. It takes a different type for sure. So last topic.
And coming,
Go on, sorry.
go for it. I was gonna say, coming from a guy who hasn't seen a video on less than 1.5x speed for the past 10 years, because I'm so impatient. I just cannot. Most of them are on 2x speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not enterprise.
So that's a good tip for anybody out there, right? If you're the kind of person who does that on the videos and puts it up to 1.5 or 2 or 3x speed, you're probably not built for enterprise sales.
I'll get you one more tip. Download an extension that allows you to get it to 10x speed, and then just listen for keywords. Whenever you hear something interesting, pull it back to 2x. Just saved you a lot of time.
Wow, nice, nice. That's it. That's like the audio version of what's it called, Blinkist, that app where you can just read the 15-minute snippets of a 3-hour book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's it. That's it.
the audio version. There's definitely a product for there out there for sure.
Yeah.
All right, just I can see we're obviously getting close to the hour right now. I know attention spans probably won't last that long for a lot of people. Hopefully, people are still on here and they found it engaging. But there's one other thing which I know you do, which is a little side gig, and you've had that running for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And this is something what I think a lot of salespeople are entrepreneurial by heart. They just have that within them. It's quite normal, I think. A lot of salespeople have already tried this or do have their own side gig, and I think there's a lot of people out there who actually they would like to, but they're like, how the hell do I get the time to do that, and what do I do and whatnot? And of course, I've done it myself a couple of times. You've been doing it for a while whilst at the side of this job. Sort of
Yeah.
give us a little bit of an insight. You know, what is your side gig, and how do you manage that as well as a
Sure.
full-time sales job?
Sure. I could probably talk about this for another 10 hours. I'll try not to. Yeah. So entrepreneurship, I've done this since I was in high school, actually. Um, but I've always like, I was always thinking, how can I make more money? Right. It's just, it's natural because coming up from Eastern Europe, it's not like you're in a rich country and you can just buy anything you see, right? It doesn't work like that. So I've always wanted more. And I learned that from going to school and whatnot. It didn't work for me. So I started with selling products online, drop shipping, doing some Amazon, e-commerce, this kind of stuff. And I've done that for a couple of years. It was quite successful to some degree. And then earlier 2021, me and my best friend since we were kids is absolutely in love with marketing. I was starting to fall in love with sales. I was already in love with sales, but I was starting to get a hang of sales. And the mindsets were quite similar. So he decided
Did you
to,
say sales and marketing mindsets are quite similar?
in terms of a commercial perspective, you know what I mean? Like, he's not a developer. That's what I mean. Okay, good point there. Good point. So he wanted to start a marketing agency. He wanted to start a new business. I had already started like 3-4 kind of businesses before, and then 1 or 2 stores with him, e-commerce stores. And I said, you know what, fuck it, let's do it together. Why not? I can get clients on board and you can deliver, you can do service delivery. We're good to go. I learned how to do all the systems, CRM, everything. We're good to go. We just need to make some money, right? We just need to invest some money in this. I already had a company, everything was set up. So what I did is, because I am, in a way, we're lucky because we're sitting in Europe, because in the agency space, marketing agency space, the biggest clients are in the US and the biggest e-com stores are in the US. So then I just thought, what if I just go only for US and Canada? That's where the money is anyway. And I can do it from 5 to 9 or from 5 to 12 a.m. When you come off of the first job, you can do this and it falls right on their time zone. I was like, holy shit, that works. And then I spent about 6 months just building everything till I got the first client. And then it's basically just, how can you juggle 2 calendars? One from 9 to 5 and one in the afternoon, and make sure you make it in time home for the next meeting. And it's fun. It's fun. It's quite a thrill, but that means you got to give up on Netflix. You got to give up on going out for a beer. You're not going to go to the cinema. You're not going to spend time on, I don't know, like Friday bars. You got to give up on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's, what do you want to do? Like, all of my friends, or like 90% of my friends, or people that I grew up with, I should say, we don't even keep in touch that much anymore, because I do so many things and they do so many things. They want to work a job, and most of them are developers, and they're happy with the salary, and they're happy with buying a house and starting a family, and that's their path. For me, that's never been an option. I'm sitting here thinking, how can I drive a Ferrari down in Monaco? It's not gonna happen if I don't put in the hours,
Yeah.
So that's that's essentially it. I was lucky because again, working on 2 time zones makes it easy from a time management perspective, and I can be at 100% capacity on both kind of businesses, so I don't neglect any of it, because I think that's fair. That's just
Yeah.
fair. I don't want to neglect my day job to
Yeah.
because that's not fair to the company. But I would say the biggest thing is sleep. um I work on 2 coffees, 3 hours of sleep, and a fucking dream. That's it. No, seriously, we gotta get some sleep in, food, eat the right shit, sleep enough, and hit the gym, get active. If you can
Yeah.
do this, you will be able to, like, you will physically be able to do it. Otherwise, if your lifestyle, if you're not in a good place in terms of your lifestyle, it's gonna be very difficult to do it. And that's what's helped me a lot.
Damn, you young people, you make me feel tired just listening to you.
Oh my god. No.
Dedication, man. Dedication. I've got to give you that.
Yeah.
Your attitude and everything about you is just, dedication, the right attitude, the right passion, chasing that goal. So,
If you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your head.
yes,
And
sir. Yes, sir.
that's it. That's it.
Cool. Mr. Rosetti, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Before we leave, I always like to just hand you the microphone and throw out there what's your two biggest tips, what you can give for number one, SDRs out there. I think SDRs out there who are actually would love to move into the AE role. They're destined. That's their destiny for them. What tip would you give to those guys out there who are looking to do something similar to what you've done and make that transition and make that shift into an SDR manager role or into an AE role? And also at the same time, for those budding entrepreneurs, I think you probably kind of just gave that message there, but for those entrepreneurs who also would like to start their own business but don't know how. So first of all, SDRs, what would be your biggest number one tip for those guys?
Be hungry, be relentless. And if you want to move into an AE role, show people that you deserve it, show people that you want it, show people that you can do it. But be relentless and be hungry and do whatever it takes and stay the extra hours, and just have this in mind. Whenever you want to stop and you want to go home, just put a note on under your monitor that says one more call. Just keep doing that.
It might be
it might be the call. And just don't give up. Don't give up. Like, people give up so easily. Do not give up. Do not give up. It's the number one thing that's helped me. Or take cold showers. That also helps. That's helped me. For the second, so for the entrepreneurs, again, could go pretty far into this, but I would say start now. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today, now, right now. Don't push it to tomorrow. Don't push it. No fucking excuses. I don't care if it's Friday. I don't care about New Year's. I don't care if you got whatever you have in planned. Do it now. If you keep saying to yourself, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it on Monday, I'll do it at the start of the month, it ain't gonna happen. You will thank yourself a year from now because you started today. That's it. Don't stop theorizing. Stop thinking. Stop taking courses. Just do. Start doing. Apply it. That's it. Then you're already ahead of 90% of people.
Awesome. Well, I can safely say I think this has been probably the best episode we've had yet, and it will be for a while. Awesome experience. Sharing all of your journey there, and I think it's inspirational for different people at different stages of the sales career as well. So appreciate you coming on and sharing it, and I'm sure we'll get you back on at some point in the future, maybe in 6 months, where you're like VP of Sales at some 500 company or something like that. So,
thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure, mate. It was amazing.
Always, my friend. Always. All right. Cool.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Thanks for stopping by and watching or listening. And of course, we'll be back again with another episode as soon as I get the goddamn time. Take it easy.